Hello and welcome to Hands-on IT 100 Examples. Today we're building a new forest, a new domain, and in order to have a new domain, you have to have a new domain controller. I already have my Windows server built. So the first thing we will have to do, we will create a new checkpoint in case I want to reuse this VM or I want to roll back the changes. That will be step number one. Always create a checkpoint so you have some place to go back to. It's an initial configuration. If anything fails or I have to change something or do it again, I can just roll back and start over. Quick look at my current configuration. My laptop has 32 gigs of RAM, so I have a little bit of resources to play with. Make sure your network card is set to bridged to Wi-Fi or whatever else you call it. So that's Windows I built in previous videos, and it's not joined to any domain. It's just a workgroup. First thing, we need to give it an IP address. Server, your domain controller has to have a static IP address. So you give it a static IP address. Your DNS is supposed to be set to the loop, which means it's going to reference itself, which is 127.0.0.1. You'll see later in the domain controller is able by reference itself is able to forward requests outside or to any other DNS server. I'll explain later. Okay, so because it's my home network, my home router is my the default gateway, which is 192.168.1.1. But in this case, I'm putting first is the local loop or local host, and then I'm putting the second DNS. I only needed to install it. Once it's installed, you should remove it. It will be inside your DNS configuration. Let's ping it to confirm we're able to connect. Yes, so DNS is working fine. Next step, you have to install Windows feature, which is Active Directory domain services. First, rename it. Every time you rename, you have to reboot. While it's doing it, I just want to explain that you need to become familiar with terminology: forest, domain, domain controller. In order to create a domain, you create the first domain controller. Once you have your domain, you can have multiple domains. and they will make up the forest. We're adding a Windows feature called Active Directory Domain Services. Two roles. The second one is if you want to set up terminal server. I'll get to it. Make sure the name is correct. Make sure IP address is correct. Keep going. Now, you don't have to install the DNS server role. Well, DNS is absolutely one of the most important features that will control the functionality of a domain. There is no replication. There is no domain without properly functioning DNS. But it will be installed automatically, so I'm not selecting it. So it's just one feature. We'll get to it as well when it's time to create a replication to Azure Intra ID or Azure AD. That's what I used to call it before they changed it to Intra ID. Now you just wait until the feature installs. Done. Now the next step is to promote this server to be the domain controller. So by installing the feature, nothing changes. You have to make sure the server acts as a domain controller in a new domain, in a new forest. First, reboot. Promote the server to the domain controller. Click on the link. Now the fun begins. So this is a new forest, new domain. We're not joining existing one. The second domain controller that I will build in one of the next videos will join this existing one. This is important. Make sure you remember this password because we will back up and restore your domain. You're going to need that password. Don't lose it. That's okay. That's only if you have a DNS that's outside of your Active Directory that you want to integrate. So at this point, there's nothing for you to do. This is not an error message. Okay, this is just telling you where data will be stored. Database location, the logs, and the sysvol folder. We'll get to each one of them eventually. Okay, this is your script. It comes with installation. You can download the script, Remember, script you download as PS1 with the extension PS1. Let's look at the script. You can use the script to build the domain controller. If you prefer PowerShell also. It could be a situation when you want to, in order to save resources, you don't want a full GUI experience, graphical user interface. Without the icons and the entire GUI experience. Maybe you want to manage it from remotely. That's what this is for. I'll use it to show you, but not right now. And let's continue. Okay, so your domain is building. It's being created. Your first domain controller is configuring. Okay, this is the first check. Scroll all the way down. This is standard warnings. They're not errors. Check completed. We're good to go. Now let's see what happens next. Just read. If you see any error messages, there are any pop-ups, anything marked red, read it because it will tell you what the problem is and how to fix it. Or maybe you can just figure out how to fix it. It looks like it's going. It's a fairly simple installation if everything goes well. I I fast forwarded the installation. There's no need to waste time, but it will take a lot longer than this. Just be patient. It will reboot a couple times. Creating profiles, applying settings. Then the last step, usually it's the group policy adjustment, tweaking and configuration. So that's something you have to do. It's done for you. Now group policy, that's the final step of this configuration. Again, set up IP first, check disk, the checkpoint, then set the IP, make sure the DNS is set correctly, install the feature or rename it, install the feature, and promote to domain controller. Now we're logging in as domain admin. There's a difference between domain administrator versus local administrator. Let's take a look. I see the features here installed. Let's look at the domains and trusts. You can have multiple domains on the same network. They will not crash. They will not conflict. I've tested it many times. For example, you have a fully functioning domain and you want to test something, so you have a sandbox domain. That's fine. First thing, just confirm there are no um, major issues or errors. Replication is not enabled because there's no replication partner. You have to have at least 2 domain controllers. That's fine. That's coming next. Okay, that's your domain. Make first click on View and Advanced Features. This way you can see a lot more. These are your OUs, organizational units. So we only have one domain controller for this specific domain, nesium.com. That is my domain and my website and a couple other things. Look at the initial configuration. We'll get to it. And these are built-in users. Administrator is the first one. Guest, you may want to make sure it's disabled. That's the first thing you should do. These days, whatever you do on computers, make sure you do it with security in mind. Go through each one of those OUs and see what's in there. Yep, that's another way to access Active Directory um, users and computers. So these icons are created for your convenience. Just type in Active Directory users and computers. Okay, also the Administrative Center. This is where you enable Recycle Bin. This is extremely important because if you delete an object, the easiest way to restore is to have a recycle bin. By default, it's not enabled. So click on your domain, and on the right-hand side, it says Enable Recycle Bin. Click on that. Now, if you delete anything from there, from your domain, you will end up in this folder. You will be able to come here and restore. It's going to be under deleted objects. That's it. This part is done. There's no need to set up primary domain controller, backup domain controller. Everything is simplified. All servers operate as peers, so there's no more important or less important. And this is your final check. As you can see, it's secondary DNS is removed. There's no need for that on the primary domain controller, well, the first domain controller. That's it. Your domain is ready. Your domain controller is ready. And in the next video, I will process new clients join to your newly created domain, and then we will add more domain controllers, remove them, clean them up, and explore available features and tools. Please subscribe and see you in the next video.